The chandeliers of the Alvarez estate shimmered like captured sunlight, scattering gold across crystal glasses and sequin dresses. Laughter rose and fell in elegant waves, yet beneath the hum of conversation, a strange quietness pulsed, something unsaid, circling the air like static before a storm. Tonight was Victor Alvarez's 50th birthday, a milestone celebrated with the precision of a corporate merger. Nothing about the evening looked spontaneous. Every flower arrangement, every smile, had been rehearsed. Victor stood at the center of it all, a practiced grin carved onto his face. To the guests, he was the perfect symbol of success, real estate magnate, philanthropist, family man. But even as champagne flutes clinked around him, his eyes betrayed a flicker of exhaustion, as if he were performing a version of himself he no longer believed in. At his side, Clarissa, his wife of barely 9 days, looked radiant. Her soft pink gown trailed behind her like a sigh, her laughter light and genuine. She greeted each guest with warmth that seemed to reflect the life she imagined ahead: travel, children, stability. When she looked at Victor, her expression carried unguarded pride, the kind of devotion that trusts completely, the kind that wounds deeply when betrayed. The band played a mellow jazz tune. Waiters drifted between tables carrying silver trays of wine and hors d'oeuvres. Victor raised his glass for a toast, his voice smooth yet slightly hoarse. 50 years, he said. Half a century of lessons, blessings, and the people who make it worth it. To new beginnings. Applause rippled through the garden. Cameras flashed. Clarissa kissed his cheek. The perfect photo captured a perfect lie. Narration 60%. After the toast, Victor excused himself to the balcony. The night air tasted of salt and jasmine. Below the laughter, Manila's distant traffic murmured like an undercurrent of reality he preferred to forget. He loosened his tie, staring at the city lights, wondering if they could see through him. Description 20%. Clarissa followed quietly. Are you all right? She asked. He forced a smile. Just overwhelmed. So many people, so many memories. It's your night, she said softly. You should be happy. I am, he lied. Her hand lingered on his arm, gentle, trusting. He looked away before her warmth could melt the mask he wore. From the ballroom, a new song began, slow, romantic. Clarissa tugged him back inside, and for a few moments they danced under the chandelier, her head resting on his chest, his heartbeat racing for reasons she couldn't hear. Across the room, a waiter accidentally shattered a glass. The sound sliced through the music like a warning. Victor flinched. Clarissa laughed it off. But in that brief silence between songs, he thought he heard his phone vibrate in his pocket, a single message waiting, unseen, unread, inevitable. He didn't check it. Not yet. Instead, he smiled for another photograph, held Clarissa's waist a little tighter, and whispered something charming for the cameras. Around them, guests clapped as the cake arrived, 5 tiers of sugar and illusion. The candle flames trembled when he leaned in to blow them out, and for an instant, before darkness reclaimed the room, Victor saw his reflection in the knife beside the cake, sharp, divided, 2 faces caught in one man. The lights flared again. The guests cheered. Clarissa kissed him, but the phone in his pocket buzzed once more, insistent, unseen, the sound that would follow him into the next chapter. The party had ended hours ago, leaving only silence and the faint scent of perfume clinging to velvet curtains. Victor sat alone in the study, jacket discarded, shirt collar open, a half-empty glass of whiskey trembling in his hand. The laughter that had once filled the house now echoed only in memory, replaced by the low hum of the air conditioner and the rhythmic throb of guilt. On the desk, his phone blinked, a single light pulsing in the dark like a heartbeat. For a long moment, he didn't move. He knew who it might be, though he'd buried that name deep beneath layers of denial. He finally reached for it. One new message: you can't erase me, Victor. The words appeared ordinary, almost tender, but they hollowed him from the inside. His pulse quickened, his throat tightened. The message had no name, no emoji, no preamble, just the truth he tried to suffocate. He deleted it instantly, but it was too late. The silence afterwards screamed louder than the words. narration 60%, he rose and paced the length of the room, gripping his glass so tightly his knuckles turned white. His reflection in the window stared back, older, tired, frightened. The mansion looked peaceful, but he felt hunted within it. A soft knock at the door. Clarissa's voice, gentle and drowsy, "Victor. Are you coming to bed?" He cleared his throat. "In a minute. Don't stay up too late. It's still your birthday." She lingered, then turned away. When her footsteps faded, he exhaled shakily. The phone buzzed again. This time, he didn't open it. He powered it off, as though that could bury the past. Dialogue 20%, the room felt smaller now, the walls drawing in. His gaze fell to the framed photograph on his desk, him and Clarissa at their wedding, only 9 days ago, smiling beneath a canopy of white roses. But beneath that frame, half hidden under scattered papers, another photo peeked out, A.W. Oman with bright eyes, hair cropped short, a half-smile that looked both fierce and fragile. Isabel. He didn't remember keeping it, the sight of her unlocked something, the warmth of her laugh, the scent of her hair after the rain, the night she whispered, "Promise me I'll never be a secret." He had promised, too easily, too cruelly. Victor slammed the drawer shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. He drained the last of his whiskey, but the burn did nothing to drown the memories. Description 20%, he sat again, staring at the phone he swore he wouldn't touch. His mind spun through possibilities. Was she in Manila? Did she know about the wedding? About Clarissa? He'd told himself she'd moved on. He'd even prayed for it. But now, with that single message, he knew, Isabel hadn't disappeared, she was close. Watching. Waiting. Victor turned the phone back on. The screen flickered alive. Another message had arrived while it slept. "See you soon, birthday boy." The whiskey glass slipped from his hand and shattered across the marble floor. Down the hall, Clarissa stirred in her sleep, unaware that her husband's perfect life had just cracked wide open, and outside, far beyond the gates, a figure watched the house lights flicker out, her face lit by the cold blue glow of her own phone screen. Sleep never came. By dawn, Victor sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing last night's clothes, phone clutched in his hand. The message glowed on the screen like a wound he couldn't close. "See you soon, birthday boy." Clarissa breathed softly beside him, the calm rhythm of a woman who believed in safety. He envied her innocence, the kind of peace bought with ignorance. Narration 60%, he rose quietly and walked to the terrace. The city below was waking, vendors setting up stalls, engines coughing to life, the sun melting through mist. Yet every sound felt distant. His world was shrinking to two people, the wife who thought she knew him, and the woman who actually did. He opened his messages again. There were older texts, months old, that he'd never deleted. "You promised that I waited outside your office all night. Does your new life erase me?" Each one felt heavier than the last. He had met Isabel during a construction project 2 years earlier. She'd been a consultant, sharp, ambitious, full of wit that cut through his rehearsed charm. What began as business dinners became something else, laughter that turned to late-night secrets, promises spoken in hotel corridors. At first, it felt pure, two lonely people finding comfort. But when she told him she was transgender, he'd frozen. Not out of disgust, but fear of exposure, of scandal, of the image he'd built. Isabel had sensed it, she always did. "You love how I make you feel," she once said, "but not who I am." He'd tried to prove her wrong. He'd whispered vows, bought her gifts, taken trips disguised as business meetings. Yet as his wedding to Clarissa approached, he began to withdraw, suffocating under the weight of his duplicity. In the end, he ghosted Isabel completely, changed numbers, blocked her accounts, and told himself she'd move on. Now, every deleted lie seemed to crawl back through that single mesa. Dialogue 20%, Clarissa's voice broke the silence behind him. "You're up early." He turned, forcing calm. "Couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind." She smiled faintly. Good things, I hope. He hesitated. Mostly. Then come eat. You'll feel better. I will, he said, though the words barely carried sound. She left, humming, unaware that her husband's hands were shaking. Description 20%. When she was gone, Victor scrolled through his gallery until Isabel's photos appeared, her smile on a beach, her hand holding his in a car mirror, the silver watch she'd given him gleaming under sunlight. The same watch he still wore. Habit, or guilt that he opened a blank message window, typed "we need to talk," then deleted it. Again. And again. Finally, he placed the phone face down and whispered to the empty room, "She won't come back." But even as he said it, a faint vibration buzzed beneath his palm, another message, arriving exactly on cue. He didn't read it. Not yet. The sound alone was enough to remind him that his secrets had found their voice again. Somewhere across the city, Isabel smiled at her own screen, eyes bright with purpose. The lie that once protected Victor was now awake, and it was coming to collect. The evening returned with deceptive calm. The Alvarez mansion glowed again, this time for the second night of celebration, an intimate dinner with close friends and family. Laughter drifted through the garden, carried by the warm Manila air. Victor, immaculate in a black suit, poured himself another drink, the smile on his face crafted with surgical precision. He'd convinced himself Isabel wouldn't appear. That the earlier messages were empty threats, desperate attempts to reclaim attention. Still, each time his phone buzzed, his stomach clenched. He left it face down beside the wine bottle, pretending not to care, pretending he still had control. Narration 60%. Clarissa was radiant again, unaware of the quiet storm inside her husband. She chatted with guests, laughed at jokes, and thanked everyone for coming. Her joy was genuine. Victor admired her for that. He wondered, briefly, painfully, if he could ever mirror such sincerity again. As the dinner progressed, speeches began. Victor's business partner raised a toast, recalling college stories that earned polite laughter. Victor joined in, his laughter too sharp, too quick. He could feel the heat rising in his chest, that same restless energy that came before every bad decision he'd ever made. Then the music paused. A murmur rippled through the room. The butler hurried to the doorway, whispering something to a security guard. Victor noticed immediately. Every muscle in his body tensed. "Sir," the guard said quietly, "there's someone outside asking for you." "Tell them to leave," Victor said. His voice came out lower than intended. "She said you'd want to see her." Said her name was. The man hesitated, eyes flicking nervously toward Clarissa. Isabel. The sound of her name cracked the air like lightning. For a second, the clinking of cutlery, the chatter, even the music, all vanished. Victor's grip tightened around his glass until it nearly shattered. Dialogue 20%. Clarissa frowned. "Who's Isabel?" Victor forced a laugh, shallow and dry. "No one important. A business acquaintance. Probably a mix-up." "Should I invite her in?" she asked, her tone still polite, still oblivious. "No," he snapped. Then, softening instantly, "I'll handle it." He excused himself before she could ask more. Description 20%. The corridor beyond the ballroom felt colder, emptier. The heavy doors opened to the front entrance where Isabel stood beneath the chandelier light. She looked different, colder, sharper. Her dress shimmered like oil under the glow, her eyes burning with something between anger and sorrow. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The years of lies, passion, and silence pressed between them like glass. "Happy birthday, lover," she said quietly. Her voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. Victor's throat tightened. "You shouldn't be here." "Oh, but I was invited once, wasn't I? Before your vows, before your perfect little wife." She smiled, a small, broken smile that hurt to look at. Behind them, Clarissa's voice called from the doorway, gentle but curious. "Victor. Who's there?" He froze. Isabel's gaze shifted past him toward the glow of the ballroom. "I think she deserves to know," she whispered, before he could stop her, Isabel stepped past him into the light. Guests turned, the band halted mid-song, and for the second time that week, Victor's celebration fell silent. The chandeliers shimmered above them, reflecting 100 eyes and a single, perfect lie unraveling in real time. Clarissa's smile faded as she took in the stranger's face, the tension, the recognition in her husband's eyes. Victor whispered, almost to himself, not here, not now. But Isabel had already begun to speak. Applause never returned after Isabel's words. The ballroom air thickened with confusion, whispers clung to the chandeliers like dust. Victor's hand hovered mid-gesture, as if he could somehow erase what had just happened. Clarissa stood frozen beside the cake table, the music dead, the cameras silent, narration 60%, Isabel didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her calm was the most terrifying thing in the room. I came to wish him happy birthday, she said softly, eyes locked on Victor. After all, we shared a few birthdays together. The room inhaled in collective shock. Clarissa's face drained of color. The fragile joy that had filled her for 9 days vanished in an instant. She looked at her husband, searching for denial, for anything that might rewrite what she'd just heard. Victor opened his mouth, but no words came. Security hesitated. No one knew whether to escort Isabel out or keep watching. The scene felt too intimate, too public, like a confession disguised as theater. Victor finally moved. That's enough, he hissed, stepping forward. Leave before you humiliate yourself. Isabel tilted her head. Humiliate myself? You already did that for me. The guests shifted, sensing danger but unable to look away. Dialogue 20%, Clarissa's voice broke the tension. Victor, who is she? He swallowed. A mistake. Isabel laughed once, sharp, bitter. You called me love once. Was that also a mistake? Her words sliced through him, clean and final. Clarissa took a step back. Is that true? She asked, her tone trembling between fury and disbelief. Victor's answer came too slowly. It was before you, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, she whispered. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. Isabel turned toward Clarissa. I didn't come to destroy your marriage. He already did. Then she placed something on the nearest table, a small velvet box, and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking in perfect rhythm with Victor's collapsing composure. When the doors closed behind her, the crowd began to murmur again, the sound of scandal spreading like wildfire. Victor forced a smile, desperate, mechanical. Ladies and gentlemen, please, ignore that scene. A misunderstanding. His voice trembled on the last word. Clarissa didn't move. Her eyes were wet but steady. You lied to me, she said quietly, and walked away. Description 20%, the party stumbled back into motion, but the illusion was gone. Victor remained by the stage, the taste of champagne turned metallic in his mouth. The cake still waited, untouched, candles half melted, wax bleeding down the tears like time running out. He stood alone beneath the chandelier, smiling for guests who no longer believed in the man they were toasting. The cameras flashed, recording the hollow mask of a husband fighting not to shatter. Later, when the last guest had left, Victor locked himself in his study. The smile finally broke. His reflection in the glass looked older, smaller, stripped bare. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, his phone buzzed again, one message, unread. He didn't open it. He already knew who it was from. The mansion was silent after the storm of guests had passed. The decorations still hung, mocking him with their perfect symmetry. Victor sat in his study, staring at the dying embers in the fireplace. Every shadow on the wall seemed to whisper something he didn't want to hear. Narration 60%. He replayed Isabel's words again and again, the way she'd looked at him, not with hatred, but disappointment. It would have been easier if she'd screamed. But her silence, her control, was unbearable. He poured another drink, the amber liquid trembling in his hand. Clarissa's footsteps broke the stillness. She entered without knocking, arms crossed, eyes hollow. You should have told me, she said quietly. I didn't think it mattered anymore, he replied, voice rough. It mattered the moment you said you loved me. He opened his mouth, but the truth was a stranger to him now. Every sentence he'd rehearsed over the years had turned to dust. I ended it long before our wedding, he tried. It was over. Then why did she still have your watch? Clarissa's tone cracked. Victor froze. My watch. She left it in the box on the table. I opened it after everyone left. He felt the world tilt. The velvet box, he hadn't dared to touch it. That's impossible. I never gave it to her. Clarissa stepped closer, her voice sharp now. She didn't just have it, Victor. She engraved it. Dialogue 20%, he snatched the box from her and opened it. Inside was his old silver watch, polished to mirror brightness. The back bore an engraving in delicate cursive. For every second you pretended, I waited. His breath caught. Isabel hadn't just come to expose him, she'd come to haunt him. Clarissa sat opposite him, exhaustion softening her anger. Tell me the truth, Victor. All of it. No more lies. For the first time, he did. He told her about the first meeting, the months of secrecy, the love that had started as comfort and ended as cowardice. He told her about the night he chose reputation over honesty. Every word felt like a confession written in glass, fragile, transparent, inevitable. When he finished, Clarissa didn't speak. The clock ticked between them like a verdict. Finally, she said, You think I can forgive you because you're sorry? No, he whispered. Because I'm still trying to be the man you thought I was. Description 20%, Clarissa stood, wiping silent tears from her cheeks. The dim light caught her reflection in the window, broken but not destroyed. You're not that man, Victor, she said softly. And maybe you never were. She turned to leave. He reached out, but his fingers touched only air. The door closed gently behind her. The sound was final, heavier than shouting. Victor sank into the leather chair, the ticking clock echoing louder now, like Isabel's message in disguise. He picked up his phone. Another text had arrived. This one read, We're not finished. The screen glowed against his face, painting him in the same cold light as before. Outside, the first drops of rain tapped against the windows, steady, relentless, like a warning. Rain had been falling since midnight, thick, merciless sheets that drowned the city in gray. Victor sat by the window, the phone still in his hand, the message glowing like a wound that refused to close. We're not finished, narration 60%, he hadn't slept. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the ceiling, made him flinch. He told himself it was a prank, some twisted trick from a forgotten contact. But deep inside, he knew the voice behind those words. Isabel was gone. Yet her silence now spoke louder than she ever had in life. Clarissa had left earlier that morning without a word. Her perfume still lingered faintly in the hall. He wanted to call her, but what would he say? That his dead lover was texting him from the grave. That he could still smell the smoke of the past even as it burned him alive. He opened the message thread again. Another text had arrived, just 3 words, Look outside, Victor. He hesitated, his pulse hammering. Slowly, he turned toward the window. Through the fogged glass, he could make out a figure standing across the street, beneath the flickering streetlight. A black umbrella. A red coat. His throat tightened. Isabel's favorite color. He blinked hard, rubbed his eyes. When he looked again, the figure was gone. Only the rain remained, pounding the pavement like an angry heartbeat. He laughed nervously to himself. I'm losing it, he whispered. She's dead. She's dead. Then came the knock. Dialogue 20%, it was soft at first, almost polite. Then again, sharper, deliberate. He walked to the door, hesitant. Clarissa. No answer. He unlocked it, heart drumming, and opened it halfway. The corridor was empty. But a small package lay on the floor, soaked from the rain. He bent down, picked it up, and closed the door quickly behind him. His trembling hands tore through the wet wrapping. Inside was a small cassette tape, old, cracked, labeled in smudged black ink. "Play me." Victor's breath hitched. He hadn't seen a cassette in years. He searched the drawers until he found an old player from his college days. The tape clicked into place with a metallic snap. Static filled the room. Then came a voice, soft, familiar, unmistakable. "Hi, Victor. If you're hearing this, it means you couldn't bury everything, could you?" He staggered backward, the blood draining from his face. "Did you think I wouldn't know?" the voice continued. "That you could hide behind a ring and a smile? You took my love, and now I'm taking back the truth." The tape ended with the sound of thunder. Description 20%. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. In the sudden dark, Victor's reflection appeared faintly in the window, shaken, ghost-like. Lightning illuminated the room, revealing something new on the glass. Smeared letters drawn by a finger. "I'm here." His breath fogged the same glass that he stumbled backward, knocking over the drink from last night. It spilled across the carpet, dark and spreading, like blood. Outside, the thunder roared again, longer this time, closer. The storm had broken, and with it, something inside Victor finally cracked. He fell to his knees, clutching the cassette player, whispering her name like a prayer. "Isabel, what do you want from me?" But the storm only answered with silence. When Victor opened his eyes, the storm had passed, but its echoes still clung to the walls. The house felt colder, heavier, as if the night had left something behind. His clothes were still damp, the carpet still wet where the whiskey had spilled. The cassette player lay beside him on the floor, the tape stopped halfway, the wordplay faintly glinting in the gray morning light. Narration 60%. He sat up slowly, head pounding. The events of the night replayed in fragments, the message, the voice, the writing on the glass. He turned toward the window. The words were gone. Only streaks of dried rain remained. For a brief second, he wondered if he had imagined it all. But the tape was real. The voice was real. And the guilt pressing against his chest was heavier than ever. A knock startled him. This time, it wasn't a ghost, it was human, steady, official. "Mr. de la Cruz?" a man's voice called. "Manila Police Department." Victor froze. His heart thudded painfully. One moment, he called, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. He opened the door to find two officers standing in the corridor. The older one introduced himself as Detective Ramos, his tone calm but probing. "We're investigating a case connected to a Miss Isabel Navarro," he said. "We need to ask you a few questions." Victor's throat went dry. "Is this about her death?" Ramos exchanged a glance with his partner. "Her disappearance," he corrected. "Her body was never recovered, Mr. de la Cruz." Dialogue 20%. Victor gripped the doorframe for balance. "Disappearance?" "But, the report said." "There was no conclusive report," Ramos interrupted softly. "You filed a statement 3 years ago claiming she drowned after an argument. We found inconsistencies in that version." The world tilted again. He tried to speak, but his tongue felt heavy. "You think we're not saying anything yet," Ramos replied. "But we'd like you to come to the station this afternoon." The officers left him with a polite nod, but the air they left behind was suffocating. Victor closed the door, locking it with shaking hands. He leaned his forehead against the wood, the sound of the latch echoing like a verdict. Description 20%. The morning light was cruel, too bright, too honest. Dust motes drifted in the air, settling on the mess of his living room. The tape player seemed to watch him from the table, silent but accusing. He pressed play again, desperate for clarity, but the tape only hissed static. Then, faintly, a whisper, "You can't hide from what you buried." The voice was warped now, distorted by water or time. But it was still unmistakably hers. Victor stumbled backward, the room spinning. He saw flashes, Isabel's face beneath the rain, her laughter in that beach house years ago, the night she vanished into the tide. Outside, the city was waking up. Cars moved. People laughed. The world went on, indifferent to the ghosts that followed him. Victor sank onto the couch, his hands clutching his head. The walls felt too close, the silence too loud. He needed to breathe. He needed to think, then his phone buzzed again. A new message. Unknown number, you told them she drowned. But I remember the blood. His pulse froze as he stared at the screen, unable to look away as the text refreshed itself. Another message appearing beneath it. See you soon, Victor. The phone slipped from his hand, landing beside the tape recorder. Outside, thunder rumbled again, faint but building, like the storm was not finished after all. By noon, Victor's name was everywhere. Television anchors said it like a curse, rolling it across their tongues with grim fascination. Victor de la Cruz, the businessman whose ex-lover vanished without a trace, now under renewed investigation. Narration 60%. He watched the broadcast from his living room, surrounded by the same walls that now felt more like evidence than shelter. A reporter stood outside his gated residence, holding a microphone with two bright lipstick and eyes that gleamed for the camera. Authorities have reopened the Navarro case, she announced. New digital evidence suggests that the victim may have attempted to contact Mr. de la Cruz days before her disappearance. A source close to the investigation confirms disturbing new developments. Victor muted the television. The silence that followed was almost worse. He knew what digital evidence meant, the messages. The ones that had haunted his phone since last night. Someone had them. Someone wanted him cornered. His phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a threat. It was Clarissa, dialogue 20%, Victor. Her voice trembled when he answered, what's happening? Reporters are outside my office. They're saying you lied about Isabel. I didn't lie, he said, pacing the floor. I told the truth as I knew it. Then why are they saying there's a tape? That she recorded you before she disappeared. He froze. What tape? They said it's being verified by the police. Victor's grip tightened on the phone. Clarissa, listen to me, someone's trying to destroy me. These messages, this tape, it's not real. It can't be. Then prove it, she whispered. Because right now, it looks like you killed her. The line went dead. Victor lowered the phone, his breath shallow. Clarissa's voice lingered in the air, merging with the muffled shouts from outside. Reporters had gathered by High S Gate, dozens of them now, flashes exploding like lightning through the iron bars. Description 20%, through the window, cameras blinked in rhythmic bursts. He could see microphones waving, voices overlapping. Mr. de la Cruz. Is it true you had a relationship with Isabel Navarro while married? Did you lie to the police? Did she threaten to expose you? He shut the curtains. The sound didn't stop. In the kitchen, the television still flickered, replaying her picture, Isabel, smiling, radiant, frozen in time. A ghost turned into a headline. Victor grabbed the remote and hurled it at the screen. The glass cracked, her face splintering into shards of light. He slumped to the floor, hands trembling, chest tightening with every breath. How could a woman who'd been dead for 3 years still ruin him? He stared at the broken TV, the reflection of his face fragmented across the screen, half guilt, half denial. Then came the faint chime of an email notification from his laptop. He hesitated, then opened it. Subject, truth isn't buried. Victor, attachment, Navarro_last_recording.mp3. He stared at the file, his finger hovering above the touchpad. Outside, the crowd roared louder. Helicopters thundered above. His entire world was collapsing, one headline at a time. He double-clicked the file. A second of static. Then Isabel's voice again, softer this time, almost tender. If they're hearing this, it means you told them everything but the truth. Victor's breath caught. He slammed the laptop shut, his reflection flickering in the cracked screen beside Isabel's ghost. The noise outside grew unbearable. Sirens, reporters, shouting, and beneath it all, faint and low, came another sound from the laptop speakers. A heartbeat. Slow. Wet. Human. He backed away, the email refreshed on its own. New message, you can't silence me twice. Victor stared at the words, his pulse pounding in his ears. Outside, the reporters screamed his name louder. The walls of the Manila police headquarters were a dull, unforgiving gray, no different from the ones in Victor's nightmares. He sat at the end of a long metal table, hands clasped tightly, the reflection of the fluorescent light trembling on his watch. Outside the room, chaos still raged, reporters shouting questions, flashes bursting like small explosions. But in here, everything was suffocatingly still. Narration 60%, Detective Ramos entered, carrying a thin folder. He didn't sit right away. Instead, he circled the room slowly, watching Victor the way a hawk watches a mouse before it moves. You've had a long day, Ramos said, finally taking a seat. I'd offer you coffee, but you look like you've already had a few sleepless nights. Victor tried to smile, but his lips refused to move. Ramos opened the folder. We've reviewed the messages you received. And the audio file you claim was sent anonymously. He looked up. Interesting thing, though, the voice on that tape, forensic software says it's authentic. Victor blinked. Authentic? Isabel Navarro's voice. Ramos's tone was steady. Matched against archived recordings. It's her. No AI manipulation, no fabrication. Victor's stomach twisted. That's not possible. She's dead. Ramos leaned forward, folding his hands. You keep saying that, Mr. de la Cruz. But where's the proof? Her body was never found. You filed a report 3 years ago, claiming she drowned during an argument. Yet divers found nothing. No remains. No witnesses. Dialogue 20%, I told you everything, Victor said, his voice cracking. She ran into the water after we fought. I tried to stop her. Except, Ramos said calmly, her phone pinged again 20 minutes after your report says she disappeared. From your beach house. Victor's breath hitched. That's impossible. Ramos slid a printed sheet across the table. GPS logs don't lie. He scanned the paper, hands trembling. There it was, signal registered, 11:42 p.m. Villa de la Cruz. Ramos's gaze didn't waver. You didn't call the police until 2 a.m. That's a gap of over 2 hours. What happened in that time? Victor slammed his hands against the table. You think I killed her? I think, Ramos said quietly, you're not telling the full story. Description 20%, the hum of the fluorescent lights grew louder, pressing into the silence. Victor could hear his own heartbeat, fast and uneven. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and wet concrete. Outside the observation glass, another officer stood watching, a woman, silent and sharp-eyed. Victor caught her reflection in the mirror's sheen. For a second, he thought it was Isabel. The same tilt of the head. The same stillness. He blinked, and the image vanished. Ramos closed the folder. You'll remain in town until further notice. Don't leave the city, Mr. de la Cruz. If you remember anything else, call me before the media does. He stood, giving Victor one last measured look. The truth has a way of resurfacing, you know. Even after years underwater. When the detective left, the door shut with a metallic click that echoed in Victor's skull. He sat motionless for several minutes, staring at the reflection in the mirror. His own face stared back, pale, hollow, aging by the minute. Then, faintly, from the corner of the room, came a whisper through the vent. A woman's voice. Familiar. You told them I drowned, but you never looked for me. Victor froze. The whisper faded, leaving only the buzz of the lights. He rose unsteadily, eyes darting to the vent. But there was nothing. Only the cold hum of the room, and somewhere deep inside him, the certainty that Isabel was not gone. The drive back from the station was a blur of headlights and rain. Victor's reflection in the car window looked like a stranger, haunted eyes, sleepless skin, a man unraveling one truth at a time. The detective's words echoed in his mind, the truth has a way of resurfacing. Narration 60%, he parked outside his mansion and sat motionless for several minutes. The gate lights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows across the gravel path. Every part of him ached, not from exhaustion, but from the slow suffocation of guilt he'd been carrying for 3 years. Inside, the house was silent again. Too silent. He set his keys down on the counter, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant roll of thunder. He wanted a drink, but his hands shook too violently to pour one. He walked into the study, the same room where he'd once proposed to Clarissa, where he'd once written love letters to Isabel. The ghosts of both women seemed to linger in the air. On the desk sat the old cassette player, still plugged in, still waiting. He pressed play again, the same static hiss through the speakers. Then, Isabel's voice, clearer this time, "You can't hide from what you did, Victor. I begged you to tell her. You said you would. But you chose silence. You chose the lie." He covered his face with his hands. Every syllable tore at the thin fabric of denial he'd stitched around himself. Dialogue 20%. "Stop," he whispered. "Please, stop." But the tape continued, relentless. "Do you remember the night at the villa? You said we'd run away together. You promised me everything, and then you left me there, bleeding, watching the tide come in." Victor's heart slammed against his ribs. "No," he muttered. "No, I didn't." He stopped. His own voice from the recording cut in next, faint but unmistakable. "Isabel, you're hysterical. You fell. It was an accident." Her response came like a knife. "Then why didn't you call for help?" The tape clicked off. The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. Description 20%. Victor stumbled backward, knocking into a chair. It clattered to the floor, echoing through the empty house. He leaned against the wall, gasping, the color draining from his face. His mind raced backward, to that night. The villa. The blood. The waves crashing against the rocks. That he remembered her scream. The shove. The sudden stillness afterward. That he had told himself it was an accident. He had buried the memory beneath work, marriage, and charity galas. But the truth had weight, a crushing, inescapable gravity, and now it was pulling everything down with it. Rain began again outside, tapping softly on the windows, steady and accusing. Victor sank to his knees, staring at the floorboards. He could almost see her there, in the reflection of the wet wood, Isabel's outline, pale and silent. The phone buzzed on the desk. Another message appeared on the screen. "Now you remember." Victor's hand trembled as he picked it up. His pulse was a drumbeat in his ears. "It wasn't an accident, Victor." The words glowed like fire in the dim light. He felt the room tilt around him. His breath came shallow and sharp. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere in the distance, growing louder. He turned toward the sound, half expecting it to stop at his gate, but it didn't. Not yet. He looked back at the screen. One final message appeared: "I'm coming home." 9 days had passed since the message appeared, the one that ended with "I'm coming home." For 9 nights, Victor hadn't slept properly. His world had narrowed to the walls of his house, every creak and flicker of light twisting into a new form of paranoia. Narration 60%. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, leaving the garden drenched in silver dew. Inside, the air carried the faint scent of mold and old whiskey. Victor had stopped answering calls, ignored his assistants, and even disconnected the landline. Every sound from the outside world felt like an intrusion. He had tried, in the first few days, to convince himself the messages were fake, someone playing on his guilt, maybe even the detective. But then the pattern changed. The texts stopped coming from an anonymous number. Instead, they came from Isabel's old contact, the one still saved in his phone. "Isabel, He had deleted it years ago. Or at least, he thought he had. Now, every morning at precisely 3:17 a.m. the same thing happened, a single message, "You remember more than you admit," and every time, he deleted it, only to find it returned the next day. His mental state began to split. Sleep brought no rest, only flickering fragments of that night by the sea, her hands slipping, her voice echoing over the waves. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back, gaunt, hollow-eyed, trembling with a fear he couldn't name. On the 9th morning, something shifted. Dialogue 20%, his housekeeper, Mara, entered cautiously, her steps light against the marble floor. "Sir, are you all right? You haven't left this room in days." Victor looked up from the armchair, his voice a whisper. "Did you see anyone come to the gate last night?" "No, sir," she said. "Only the delivery van, like usual." He frowned. "I didn't order anything." She hesitated, then handed him a small, unmarked package wrapped in brown paper. It was left by the gate. No sender's name. Victor's pulse quickened. "Who signed for it?" "No one, sir. It was just there." He took the box with shaking hands, dismissed her, and waited until she'd gone before unwrapping it. Inside lay a small black flash drive and a folded note written in blue ink, "Play me where it began." Description 20%. Victor stared at the message for a long time, his breath fogging the air. Where it began, the villa. The sea. The night everything changed. He plugged the flash drive into his laptop. A single video file appeared, img_0923.mov. His cursor hovered for a moment before he pressed play. The screen lit up with shaky footage, waves crashing, the sound of the wind, and then Isabel's voice, "Victor, please. Stop recording. This isn't funny." His throat tightened. He could see himself now in the frame, smiling, holding the camera, saying something too faint to hear. Then Isabel turned, fear flashing across her face. A scream, a blur, a sudden splash. The screen went black. Victor sat frozen. His mind screamed, but no sound came out. Slowly, he reached for the laptop lid and closed it. In the silence that followed, a single notification chimed on his phone. One new message. "It's time to finish what you started." He rose to his feet, his expression hollow yet resolute. Outside, the storm clouds were gathering again, dark and heavy. This time, he knew where he had to go.